Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 42, or the second episode of 2026 of This Is the Year. In today's episode, again, I'm being joined by Joao, and we are going to talk about some roadblocks for 2026. But if we reverse the word roadblocks, it actually becomes challenges and at the same time opportunities that you can solve for clients and even build your own software. So we will a little bit deep diving into some opportunities for 2026 in that case. We talk about GPT-5 Codex. And then at the end, Joao, brief finance corner. We're quickly discussing the TSMC results. They came in hot and burning, and that has some accelerating effect on the entire industry. So stay tuned. If you're an AI stock investor, that might be an interesting segment for you to also check in and then maybe align your portfolio for 2026. Joao, how are you doing? How is the world of AI in Lisbon?
The world of AI is doing very well in Lisbon. I think it's doing very well across the world. But as you know, a lot of companies are setting up shop here in Portugal, and you see a lot of new positions coming up for AI. I get annoyed a lot with calls from HR. I keep turning them down, but they keep calling. I have to find a setting in LinkedIn that says, "Please don't call."
You have to
I'm
get
good.
ghost mode. AI engineer, Joao, you're a ghost moding. You're not available
I
anymore.
might just tell an agent just to reply to them saying, thanks, but no thanks. Appreciate the contact, but
It's a
I'm
good
busy
position to
building
be in.
things.
It's a good position to be in. Talking about opportunities, Joao, let's kick it off with just generally speaking, there is a lot of challenges as well in the current market that we see. Talking to clients, talking to internal friends, and also basically experts in the field, be it researchers or even professionals as well. One particular problem that I hear ongoingly, and I kind of want to have your opinion as well, is just the notion of observability. So we have these agents, ideally now in the next few months, actually being introduced to a lot of organizations. And yet, especially if you build for finance, if you build for more regulated industries, you would want to have some sort of auditability, observability, and just generally the sense of that you actually want to know what these agents are doing. What's your current, maybe best takeaway on this topic? Is that something that we are still 4 steps behind, or we're actually more or less where we need to be in terms of implementing it?
Technology is here. The people take a bit longer. Most companies are looking into it because if they weren't looking into it 2 years ago when they first started doing demos and POCs and MVPs of Gen AI bots in their software, they need observability now. I mean, they're launching these things into production. They need to know how the conversations are going, what's the latency, what each call is doing, how much is it taking, how many steps are happening. We talked a lot about we're doing agents now, not just simple chatbots, but agents that actually do things. But doing things is like a lot of different steps that are happening sequentially, sometimes concurrently, but you have to track each and every single of those steps. Otherwise, you don't know where it might fail or how it might fail. Right now, there's like 2 major platforms. I think one major platform for observability that people usually go to first, which is LangSmith. I mean, the LangChain and LangGraph ecosystem, we talked about them in the beginning. They were very early on. I think they were at the first mover advantage, and they got a lot of the market. It's a really popular Python and JavaScript. I think they're about to support different languages. Framework to build these kinds of agents. And to monetize on that framework, which is open source, they built a whole platform that you can trace your things, you can trace your agents, and have that insight on what's happening. However, it is insanely expensive. If you're building it for yourself, if you're a small team, you might get it for cheap or even free. But if for the enterprise licenses, they charge a very premium cost. It's also a very good service, but still. Which means a lot of competitors enter the scene doing a very similar product just for a cheaper cost. So for those companies who are now looking to observability, look at different possibilities, consider the option of hosting it yourself. It's a bit complicated, but you can find engineers to do it. It's probably cheaper than paying a lifetime license to some software that it might get cheaper one day, but it's not going to be cheaper for the next at least year or two.
Okay. I mean, it's usually the way it is. If there's a first mover advantage. They might actually price that in as well. At the same time, as I mentioned it at the beginning, might be an opportunity as well, especially if you target it for a particular subset of industries, or maybe even really domain specific. Auditability especially is relevant for finance, for audit, maybe generally the audit industry, for insurance potentially as well, and everything that's a little bit more regulated. So you might actually be target even a service for that particular subdomain. And then again, these clients that most of them maybe don't even have tech teams, they don't have to actually rely on external employees and or use then Langsmith at a higher premium, as you mentioned, Joao. The second maybe point as well, it's an ongoing discussion for us. It's an ongoing discussion for everybody that's probably in the field, that's testing, having a test harness, especially if a new model comes out, but even more generally, having testing purposes for particular use cases ongoingly and ideally automatic and definitely not manual. That's, again, I think it's unchanged from 2025 and in 2026, yet probably another opportunity. We talked about that even off the podcast many, many times, launching a service for testing, mostly decided against it. I still see
So
a
far, yeah.
problem so far, exactly. So it's still probably a problem in 2026. It will remain the same and or even being increased once the agents actually take over. They have more autonomy in task execution, in task planning. Like we need to kind of more or less first test that before it's actually being flooded into the organizational endeavor. So what's your maybe read in January 2026? Is it going to be easier with agents than with chatbots? Probably not.
Absolutely not. I mean, because we talked about testing in a context of reg agents, like these knowledge agents. You go on a website, you ask something, it browses the website on your behalf and tells you things. To test that, you can test what parts of the website the agent went to. If it replied, like the reply, does it match what says on a website? Like we have testing frameworks and we have specific algorithms to test that. In the world of agents, so it becomes increasingly more complex, because imagine you have an agent that goes to your platform. You have an enterprise, you have a custom platform, you have an agent that's working and interacting with that platform. It is incredibly complex to test whether the agent chose the right tool, clicked the right button on your platform according to what the user asked. Maybe it had to do a sequence, and maybe it could do a sequence of five buttons, or there was a shortcut for something, and he could do 2 or 3 buttons, but they both would end up the same result. How would you possibly test that? Is it possible? It is. Is it complicated? It is. And companies, I was talking about this before the podcast, if they're not already in production and not already happy with their products, they might be very hesitant to spend engineering time and a lot of resources to actually build the testing frameworks they need for this. They might just try different things or either drop the projects altogether because they have no way of actually testing things. And like we said in the last podcast, and we'll mention here again, like new models are coming out, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But if you don't have a testing framework, you also don't have a good, reliable way to jump models. Like you cannot go from Anthropic to GPT or to the new version of the same model you're using, because you have no way to compare what the new model is doing to what the old model is doing. So testing is required, obviously. However, it is a very niche area for you to build a product that actually is able to interact with these agents and test them and give some kind of valuation that you can test for regression, test for features, test if it's getting better across time, or if your performance of your agent is degrading in your platform as the platform changes.
I mean, it's especially important because we are now moving from a one shot or kind of a one time back and forth interaction in 2025 to a multi-step interaction across the entire organization potentially. So the testing requirements probably are exponentially more complicated and exponentially more challenging once you have more agentic systems, as opposed to in 2025, it was mostly like back and forth chatbots that you, again, as you mentioned, or at least maybe simple actions. But once we have more autonomy, I believe testing is incredibly important. It's basically like you would introduce a drunk employee to your organization. You don't want to do that because the harm might be quite bad. Wrong invites, of particular meetings, wrong actions, maybe wrong P&L, bookings, and so on and so forth. And then you don't realize it for many, many months. So that's basically what we are about to do. We're kind of releasing potentially drunk agents into the organizations. If that's the case, if they haven't been really tested well before they're being launched. And the one you mentioned it as well, not only do we have agents that are increasingly having autonomy in the organizations, but they're constantly being updated in terms of their brain. Because once you kind of have a trained human and the human is within the organization, at least you can have some sort of baseline. Okay, this is that particular behavior of this particular person. Once we have agents, they're constantly being updated in terms of their intelligence, their behaviors. And that again probably adds a layer of complexity on top. Once again, requires probably a really strong and well-suited test harness. The third component, we mentioned that a little bit in 2025, and it's probably again still a pain / an opportunity, is skills for agents. They're very high. Just in a nutshell, description of a skill to an agent is basically a particular specialized explanation, can be in Markdown file, including scripts and maybe other resources, of the agents having to execute a particular task. So for example, you're doing a risk model, you're doing an insurance model. Yes, you can context engineer it a little bit, or at least actually very advanced. You can also prompt engineer it. But then the third missing component is like this business lens. These are the skills. So I think skill engineering, also one student briefly asked me about some new research topics. I do supervise almost more than a dozen theses this semester, and one particular student is going into the direction of skill engineering. What's your take, Joao, on skill engineering? Is that something that's here to stay, or it's just another fancy term?
I think, at least for the foreseeable future, it's a pleasant middle ground between either you build a completely separate agent just for that. Imagine you building, like you said, financial models. You might build one agent specifically for one kind of financial model, where you explain how the model is supposed to work, what variables are supposed to be used, the formulas, what to be taken into account. You have to explain that to the agent, especially if you have like more custom templates for your company or for your models. You can try to give them 3, 4, or 5 different models like at the same time and hope the agent picks the best. You might end up with a mismatch of a lot of different formulas, a lot of different models, which is not what you want, possibly. So, skills, instead of building an entirely separate agent for this, it becomes like this pleasant middle ground where the agent can see just a small description of what the skill is, what the model is, and if it sounds appealing, then the model can go further in that direction. The same way you would, like, you're joining a new company, you don't know anything yet. Like an LLM wouldn't know anything specific about your company. But as soon as you need to know something, you go into documentation, you research, you learn more about that specific topic before you do anything. Like if you ask me to do like a financial model, I haven't done it in a while, I'll go online, I'll go read the research, and then I'll go build your financial model. Same thing for the agents. They don't have to go online. You can have those models, those skills. Even if, for example, one skill could be to write a report. There's a template for the report that you want to use. There's some key points that you want to mention in every single report. That can be a skill. How to search for something online can also be a skill, because you might want to limit what websites it uses, how it phrases the search queries, what's supposed to like the filtering of possible fake news and possible like biased news sources. All those are skills, and like the description of the skill, how to do it, and also the tools associated with doing it. So it could be tools to interact with Word or Excel, tools to interact with the web. I think it's a very pleasant, very powerful way of upgrading agents. And we might see in the future that you have a company, you have one agent, one very powerful agent, and you don't have to keep replacing LLMs. I think they're still going to be out every few weeks, every few months. You're going to have a new major LLM. But the thing that makes it work for your company is having the right skills for the LLM to use. And the better the LLM is, the better it will be at choosing what skill to use and using that skill. But at the end of the day, it's the skill that matters. Otherwise, it won't build you that report. You won't search for the thing. You won't end up with any kind of financial model or healthcare report or whatever it is that you want the agent to do.
I mean, it's a good wrap up. I mean, the way I look at this, I mean, it's January 2026. There's a lot of things that might be changing, but at the end of the day, I think in prompt engineering, we always believe that humans will do prompt engineering. And then I think in like 2 to 3 months, this myth was debunked that mostly the large language models, they're actually doing prompt engineering a lot better than humans are doing prompt engineering. So that's kind of, well, we kind of lost that human touch to the machine already. The second point, context engineering, I think that's mostly an engineering topic. That's for technical experts that are basically trying to optimize the context window of a particular large language model. So that remains for now in the human domain. Skill engineering, just at least again mentioned at the beginning in January 2026, my understanding, this will also most likely will remain in the human domain, at least for the time being, because it kind of gives this observational eye to the agent that it's kind of lacking anyway in the first place. And it's this artifact that a human expert, human professional can actually update, maintain, refine, monitor over, let's say, months and months and months of usage. And it's not probably being replaced by agents simply because they don't have the awareness, at least for the time being, what is actually really important in terms of ways of work, best practices, maybe particular types of modeling, just some human touches. So basically, that's a little bit my best read. So skill engineering might be one of the keywords that we probably see and hear a lot more in 2026. It's a human, not a human job per se only, but it's probably part of human jobs in the future. So we are engineering skills, packages, or basically artifacts that one agent, even a smart one or multiple agents, might actually be consuming individually. And then again, that's where we humans, I would say, probably inject the knowledge into organizational agentic AI systems. So that's a skill to learn. That's a skill to study. We'll hopefully cover a lot more what we believe might be the best practices on this podcast. So stay tuned, maybe for future topics on skill engineering. Maybe two more challenges is usually MCP governance. I can quickly drop. We maybe are following up on that in a future episode. Model context protocol, it's docking all these data sources, but there needs to be also some governance structures and governance framework, not that the agent goes all over the place in the org. The second one, the last one, is basically data layers. We have very advanced intelligence now. Large language models probably in 2026 will reach superhuman intelligence. They're post PhDs in many, many domains. So I think the intelligence part we more or less solved. What we haven't still solved is that that's the actual homework that the human organizations still probably haven't done, and that's data availability. You have very intelligent systems, but you have little to no data availability in many, many organizations. So it's a little bit like you have maybe a very advanced Lamborghini engine, but you don't have a chassis. So this whole thing can't drive. Maybe that's just something else I wanted to quickly have your opinion, Joao. What's your read? Like, how ready are these organizations in terms of data layers, data availability to then really leverage AI agents?
Depends on whether the big, small, or medium companies. And also, the best ways of seeing how data ready the company is when ask a new joiner of the company. Someone you just hired, after a couple of weeks, how well did they onboard? Because when you join a company, you have to read documentation and you have to go search for things. If you're a developer, you have to set up local environment. If you're a business analyst, you have to get to know each and every different businesses and different departments of the company. And you can do this by setting up calls with every single department heads and different people, different roles of the company. Or imagine that you have to do this without talking to anyone. Like you join in the middle of August, everyone's on vacation, but you have to know the company nonetheless. So you go see the documentation. So you go see what's available online on the company's platform, on their SharePoint or whatever they keep documentation, to see how things work. Like who's responsible for what, and how does each department work. And a lot of times what you'll end up with is there's documentation, but it's usually just expired. So like the thing, we used to do it that way, but now we don't anymore. So ignore that page. Or that page has a guide on how to do it. You open it, hits half blank. Like someone started it, then they got fired or they left for a different company, so never finished the actual guide. you end up with a lot of that mismatch. If you ask someone who just onboarded in your company, they'll have a very quick view of how things go. And you can try to do it your own company. Like if you're in middle management, if you're like in the C-suite, imagine you just got hired. Try to see if you can learn everything about the company just from the documentation. And then imagine like asking a developer, how easy would it be to like make an API for all of this? May have an agent be able to read all this documentation. It doesn't have to read it all every single time, but it has to know how it's divided, where it is. So if it needs to, it can actually go search for it. Then you'll see how the company is prepared. Most of them are halfway there. They're not entirely in the wrong, but it's harder. I think smaller companies especially don't care much about documentation because it's a 5, 6, 20 people operation. If someone onboards, they can just ask around and get to know the company. So why write it down? There's a lot of human powered knowledge going around. Harder to transfer for agents, which makes it harder for these companies to actually incorporate agents.
So that's mostly the knowledge component, basically, of an organization. I mean, there is this concept of tacit knowledge. That's the stuff that we don't even write down. It's just kind of this behavioral norm that's certainly lacking. But on top of that, it's just mostly also data products. So many companies that I at least talk to, they don't have any data product owner. They don't have data mesh like as an architecture to actually expose particular data products once again to an agent to consume, to move from one data product to the next and reason through. I think these are the homeworks that many organizations haven't yet done. At the same time, this is let's say, call it an opportunity as well to maybe build a conclusive data layer, like a middleware a little bit for these agents. You would anyway need to do that if you're building a SaaS component of your own software, but maybe as a particular subservice might be an interesting domain as well to go into without explaining it too deep here. Yeah, sure.
And something related to that, there was and there is one of the major AI providers that had one of the major AI chatbots. And so far, it was not OpenAI, it was not ChatGPT. But every time you talk to it, the model was good, but it was never personal to you. ChatGPT was the leading, I think, one of the leading chatbots, exactly because it learned things about you, and across time it would customize the answers and remember what you said earlier. Gemini from Google didn't in the past. They just now, Google, announced that they will start to build, and they're launching, I think, in the US for some customers, and then they're going to roll out to Europe and Asia and later the world when they find it fit. They are building like the memory of Gemini. So Google has like massive capabilities and also this massive ecosystem of your own profile in Gmail and YouTube and Calendar and all the Google products, like your Android phone, if you have an Android phone. And even Google, like with the size that they have, with the capabilities that they have for engineering, took maybe more than a year to actually build or be able to build a layer on top to connect all these data points to feed to the AI. I think they did for different products to build a profile for advertisement profiling. They didn't do it for AI. They couldn't have predicted it 5 years ago. And it took them a year and something to connect all of these data points to build a chatbot. And I think it'll be good. I think it'll be equally comparable to ChatGPT or probably even better because this have more data from the get-go. However, as a company, your takeaway from this is the more data you have, the harder it will be to connect everything. You'll have to do it anyway, so might as well start as early as possible. Come up with an architecture that makes it simple for you to connect data points, to cross-reference things, to connect data from a product to where it's made, to the inventory, to the factory, who's selling it, the invoices, everything that matters to be able to connect it and feed it to an agent because you'll need it. Even if not an agent, then a platform for you to cross-reference things, check data, even running those traditional machine learning models to get predictions on sales for next year. Having all the data points and a good data architecture matters. And it sometimes takes only a couple of engineers to design a very good architecture for this.
I mean, it's a very valid point, as I just repeating myself once again, but you have very advanced intelligence, but the intelligence actually can't be really being embedded because you don't have any proprietary data that I can actually use and execute tasks on. I think that's really I think that the major roadblock for 2026 for many, many large organizations that haven't really yet done the homework to be then readied for agentic artificial intelligence, maybe in 2026. The AI agents, they're kind of ready anyway, but they can't be onboarded into your org if you don't have this, I guess, homework executed before. But again, that's a very vast topic. We maybe bring it up over and over and over again because that's one of the biggest bottlenecks for 2026. So maybe stay tuned for maybe episode 44, 45. We're going to talk about it again. Let's move on to some very brief other topics. GPT 5.2 Codex was launched. You have some argument there, Joao, but I park that in a second. Let me quickly first talk about TSMC Q4 revenue. I put it on the screen here. It came in hot and blazing like many, many analysts expected in the world. What is TSMC? For those of you in the audience who don't know, it's basically the fabrication or fab of the entire globe of advanced AI chips. It's pretty much the only company other than maybe another Chinese company that's actually being able to manufacture these chips. Basically, I could put another photo on the screen here. They're basically printing these designs on these wafers, and it's pretty much the only company. If that company is basically, as it is now, reporting very stellar results, that means basically that the industry is demanding these chips. So that's why there's a lot of, I would say, upside today on AMD, NVIDIA, ASML. Like the entire industry is being lifted because the fabrication engine, TSMC, is reporting great results, is reporting stellar earnings. And that, again, gives a little bit of confidence in early 2026 that we might actually not yet see a bubble pop. TBD if that's still not going to happen. I'm going to look into the future. But at least it showcases all these revenues and all these expenses are actually being placed, for example, into the case of Taiwan here, TSMC, and all these chips are being manufactured. Also, NVIDIA just announced a new Vera Rubin chip. Again, that's being manufactured by TSMC. So there's a lot of positive nuance to that particular reading. Yes, we still probably have some high valuations on AMD side, on NVIDIA side, on Micron, SK Hynix, and also SanDisk. The entire ecosystem yet benefits if there is strong numbers by the fabrication engine TSMC. That's a little bit the high-level finance corner. Back to you, Joao, on GPT-5.2 Codex. What you have for us, is it worth the money?
Depending on how much you paid for it. So it came out, I think, a few days ago. It's still quite recent to have a good idea on how it handles complex projects. But so far, I've been on the forums, and I usually am on software engineering forums, and almost everyone is using Cloud Opus. And most coding agents that you pay for charge an extra for using Opus. It's a very large model. It's expensive to run. Anthropic was never shy about pricing it in the performance of these models. So Opus is incredibly expensive compared to other models available. It is, however, worth it. So GPT-5.2 Codex tries to beat Opus at coding. It's a coding specific model, so like they fine-tuned 5.2 to be better at coding engineering, software engineering. It is better than it was before. It is a gradual step in making these agents more and more capable. It's good that we have competition. Most workflows, you should be able to use at least 2 different models to bounce off each other. Otherwise, you may have one model to build something. If you can't review it, because maybe it's an area you don't know, maybe it's in a language you don't know, maybe you're purely vibe coding and you have no idea what the code actually means, you need at least one different LLM to be able to review it. Because in most cases, if you ask the same LLM to review it, they'll say, it's amazing work, I built it. Which is a very human trait, to be honest. But if you want actual reviews, you have to have different models. So having somewhat of a competitor to Opus is good. It's not as good as Opus. At least it doesn't seem to be good as Opus, which is a shame that we're still not beating it. A huge congratulations to Anthropic for building such a capable model that's holding off, I think, for at least 4 to 5 months now. maybe it'll reach 6 months, which to stay on the podium for 6 months is quite a fit for the LLM world.
I mean, it is.
But we'll see.
It's definitely a feat. I mean, TBD. I mean, we mentioned it multiple times on the show here. Everything that's out now in terms of LLMs is not being trained on the latest tech. But just like me thinking, imagine the Claude model lineup is being trained on Vera Rubin with all these improvements. We'll probably see that maybe in 2027. And that's going to be absolutely mind-boggling because all these coding agents, they're already pretty advanced. And now imagine that's like another, maybe not an order of magnitude, but maybe twice or 3 times or maybe 4 times as capable in 2027. That's going to be an incredibly interesting time to be alive, time to be building SaaS and generally software, because these models are really, really on the horizon to be incredibly, incredibly good in software development. Many people like ourselves, we are being less and less and less skeptic that we can actually be using them for advanced software engineering. That's been my last read on today's talk. Again, we talked a bit about challenges / opportunities, GPT-5.2 Codex, probably not being the number one yet, still Opus 4.5 is ruling the world, and TSMC Q4 revenue, again, a strong signal for 2026 once we are heading into the new year. Actually, I have not yet built my 2026 portfolio. I just opened a new one. So I think the next, let's say 10 to 15 days, I'm trying to allocate some Swiss francs and more Swiss francs every month into the new portfolio.
To build
Let's see.
Your own ETF.
Exactly.
The Cyril's ETF for technology.
To have my own. Exactly. I mean, it's probably like 97% AI, a lot of infrastructure. I haven't yet really fully decided where I put the money in for 2026. It's still a little bit difficult to read. Is it again infrastructure? Is it maybe the usual play with hyperscalers and infrastructure? Or is it maybe some high risk play like photonic elements into the chip design? Or is it going to be energy? I haven't yet fully decided, but I'll bring it on the show and sure we can again have some sort of discussion in the future. Anything else from your side, Rob? Or we are good to head into Friday on episode 42?
So far, so good. I still have to test this new model, so I have new opinions next episode. But I'm excited to be building, and even though 5.2 Codex maybe not as good as Opus, it is, however, very good at building things like Opus is. And so I think that 2026, if 2025 was the year to build things, 2026 is the year that is even better to build things. However, that would be a very bad title for a podcast. So we'll keep this is a year.
Exactly. I mean, we said that last time.
But it is still true.
It's kind of this vacuum that I think the next 24 to 36 months, like if you have a great business idea, and we maybe ideally gave you a few at the beginning, it's really the time to build because you have this knowledge advantage how to use these tools. If then the general public in 36 or 72 months, they all know how it is actually working, or it becomes so easy that every single person can build it, there's a lot more competition. So I think that's kind of the vacuum you should take action on. 2026, 2027. 2025 was for studying, 2026 is for launching, 2027 is for scaling. That's probably the mental model that you can apply here. Great. Joe, thanks for joining for episode 42. Next week, 43, we talk about more things artificial intelligence. Feel free to drop a comment and a question. We're active on LinkedIn, TikTok, and here on YouTube. And we see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.